And welcome everybody. It's Melt, the Westeros Ninja. Just welcoming everybody in the chat for another episode of our me and Dog's top five or top question mark series. Tonight we're gonna do a special top seven, top seven fighters of a Game of Thrones and a Song of Ice and Fire. We're calling it a trial by seven. And as usual, we have Dog here. Say hello to everybody, Dog, and tell everybody what you're up to.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another top list with Dog and Ninja. So I'm Dog. You guys are I'm still Dog Sidious, folks. Don't freak out. All I did is I changed the channel name to the Dawg Show now. So, I do entertainment news, play games, have live chats, things of that nature too. So really excited to be here tonight. Getting to actually talk some Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire with probably one of the most knowledgeable folks in the community this evening. So I'm getting into the fighting pit tonight with a ninja. So wish me luck, folks.
Yeah, sounds good. And of course tonight we're doing top seven fighters of Game of Thrones right here. Okay, so I mean, we're not saying that these are the top seven fighters objectively, right? But it's like our top seven fighters based on our criteria. And at least from my criteria, the way I based my rankings, it was based on how good they were with their, legendary weapons or whatever weapons that they normally use, plus how good they were or could be if they were totally de-weaponized with no armor. So if you just basically add those two factors together, you would get kind of like my ranking. And Dog, what about yours? How did you do your rankings?
As I was, when I was brainstorming my list and things of that nature, I went back and I was thinking of Thoros of Myr, and the words he was talking, or actually, it was Thoros, right? Where he was praying during that trial by combat with the Hound and Beric Dondarrion, right? And he was talking about, strike this man down if he's false, and if he's true, give strength to his sword. So that was a big factor in my criteria of who's my best fighter, things of that nature. Was the true person, and honor, things of that nature also. And of course also, you got to be pretty badass with weapons and fighting and things of that nature. Your durability was a big factor also. Has this fighter done something? Have they overcome something that nobody else has overcome? And also, do they have have they grown from their arcs kind of thing? Have they gotten better over time? Things of that nature too.
And were you taking into account any of Dan and Dave's leveling up in the show?
What? I'm sorry, Mel.
Were you taking into account any of Dan and Dave's leveling up of characters in the show?
Right. Yeah. I might make mention to some Dan and Dave factors, if you will, to where I just throw that out to, okay, hey, Dan and Dave, put that in there, and don't let it tamper my list, so to speak. Right. I'll call it the Dan and Dave mulligan, if you will.
Remember, guys, so we do have a Dan and Dave factor here tonight. And, and this is the Game of Thrones and a Song of Ice and Fire. So, so there will be characters, at least on my end, I have a mix of show characters and also characters from the lore who are renowned as being badasses here. So I'm really looking forward to this, Dog.
That's what I'm looking forward to, because like I mentioned to a lot of folks, I've only read the first book, right? And I'm stepping into here with the Grandmaster of Trivia folks tonight, right? And I know that he knows a lot of the lore, things that Dog is not, privy to, if you will, right? However, right, when I was making my list, there was like a lot of folks that didn't make my list, and I was like, wow, that was tough. It's tough to leave some of these people off this list right now. And I'm going, wow, Milt's probably going through a heck of a lot more pain than I am right now, leaving some folks out. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it with Milt here tonight.
Great. So I think we should go ahead and get started right now. As usual, we're going to start off with our honorable mentions. People who are just basically on the bubble that couldn't crack our top seven. So I think we're going to go start with Dog's honorable mention, and here it is. Go,
yep.
Tom, Dog.
And my honorable mention, folks, is the Mountain It Rides, Gregor Clegane. So you folks are probably already going, ah, how is he possibly just an honorable mention? And again, folks, other than what the stories have kind of told us, right? He's kind of just like a Hulk smash, kind of figure, right? I saw Oberyn Martell just kind of dismantle him, right? And he was about to be defeated by Prince Oberyn. Had it not been for Oberyn's mistake of, kind of being a little too proud, if you will, right? And not taking his enemy as seriously as he should have, right? This guy though does deserve a mention though. Again, like my factors were, things about truth and things of that nature. Because even in his trial by combat, he is virtually killed in this fight, right? I mean, he's pretty much a dead guy after this fight, right? So the gods, if you will, kind of come down on him, even though the other fighter is killed also, right? But there was still something in there that the gods didn't like. If you want to take it with that nature, right? That still said that, hey, the mountain, he wasn't true, and he was kind of struck down, if you will, right? But again, this guy can literally rip your head clean off, right? Like if he gets a hold of you, he can just pop your head, just absolutely clean off, right? And other than the Oberyn fight, we haven't really seen him, go up against like some great fighters, if you will. But I am going to mention him a little bit later because one thing I did want to mention about him was he is the bar, right? Like if you defeat the mountain, people are going to talk about you, right? You're going to be listed as probably one of the greatest fighters of all time if you defeat the mountain. So that's why he made my honorable mention list. And
yeah, I mean, he certainly is a big brute, and also, he was also part of one of the great cinematic scenes of TV history where he basically stuck his thumbs into Oberyn Martell's eyes and pushed him back into his brain. So that was pretty cool. So, okay, so my honorable mention, guys, is somebody from the Dance of Dragons era, and that's no other than the Red Kraken, Dalton Greyjoy. And no, he is not a character from Twilight or Dawson's Creek. Okay, so this guy was a certifiable badass of the Ironborn. So since he was an Ironborn, you know that he was bred to violence from a young age, and he was. I mean, he's basically the Ironborn's greatest hero in their history. He's a great warrior and a military genius. Okay, think about this guy. He started rowing the longships at age 5. He started reaving the shores of the Westerlands and the Riverlands and the North at age 10. Then by 14, he sailed to Old Gis. Okay, and then as he was coming back, he fought some battles in the Stepstones, and he basically picked off a Valyrian steel sword by the name of Nightfall. Okay, which is one of the coolest names, if not the coolest name of all the Valyrian steel swords out there. And he basically, when he was coming out of this battle, in the Stepstones, he was just basically drenched in blood from all the people that he killed, and that's how he got his nickname, the Red Kraken. So, after that, he came back to the Iron Islands, and then at age 15, he basically claimed the Seastone Chair, and then he basically was up to a lot of shenanigans during the Dance of Dragons, where he basically sided publicly with the Greens, but ended up just doing the dirty work, for the Blacks by raiding the Westerlands, basically, and basically affecting their ability to wage war, especially their navy. So this guy was a total badass. Okay, we don't know a lot about his fighting abilities, but being an Ironborn, doing all he did at such a young age, I can't think of any reason why he wouldn't be a really, 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 really good fighter. And basically what was said about him was basically he loved 3 things: the sea and the sword and women. And of course, at the end of the day, women was his downfall. You can read about how he died. So that's my honorable mention, the Red Kraken. So let's go ahead and basically start our top 7 now. So now that we got our honorable mentions out of the way, and we're going to go and basically start with Dawg, and for his number 7, go ahead, Dawg.
So yeah, my number 7, folks, is, we got it up there. Yep. Yeah, I was about to say, I wanted to make sure it was the same one. I got them all memorized, folks. So yeah, it's Tormund Giantsbane, folks. So Tormund Giantsbane is an absolute beast. I would definitely want him on my side if I was having a scrum with someone, folks. So when I think of a fighter, Tormund definitely is. I think of him as a fighter class, if you will, right? So this guy is an absolute champion amongst his wildling folks, his free folk, if you will, right? He is a champion of the champions, right? This guy was so much of a beast, right? And we had already seen how much of a great fighter he was during the Watchers of the Wall episode, things of that nature, right? But to actually come into the camp with all the crows, right? And then you have Lord of Bones come up to him, right? Talk a little smack to him, right? And all these folks are just ready to kill him, right? As he's bringing these crows up to him, right? He just, takes that stick and just beats that dude to death with it, right? And just says, let's gather the others and talk, right? And nobody does nothing. And the reason being is because he is their champion. He's the champion of the free folk. So he is on my list. We've seen him go through battles with, again, the Watchers of the Wall, right? At the Wall, of course, right? We saw him at Winterfell just being an absolute he was just trucking people, right? He even had that fight with Small John Umber right at the end. So it's not like he wasn't fighting elites or anything like that too, right? So and all the way up until we saw him fighting with the Night King's army, right? He was going at him just like an absolute champion, and he wasn't stupid, right? He wasn't a dumb fighter or anything like that to not call for help when he needed it, right? At his absolute time of need, he called for help and he got help. And that's why Tormund Giantsbane made my list of top 7 fighters.
Yeah, and the guy's a really, really great actor. I mean, can you look at his crazy eyes that he has? It's great. I mean, those are
like I said, I wouldn't want him mad at me.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think Brienne appreciated his looks either. So at her, and I mean, I remember that one scene that he did where basically, he invited Davos to his tent right before the Battle of the Bastards and say, hey, you want to stop on by my tent? Like I have a jug of sour goat's milk. Sort of like maybe that's like a spinach or something like that, like, what Popeye eats before he goes into battle. So anyway, that's a good choice. Tormund Giantsbane, Dawg's number 7. My number 7 is none other than, I had to put him in here, Khal Drogo, the great Khal. And, and what made him great amongst, his people, the Dothraki, was that he never had to cut his hair since he began fighting, right? So basically, because he was undefeated in single combat, anybody that went up against him, they were murdered. So, the guy's a big brute, okay? He's just low. I mean, he was undefeated in his own people, but we never actually saw him fight against like Westerosi knights or whatever. So I really don't know how well he could have done against them because he didn't wear any armor and he had a kind of a short-ranged weapon, which is that Iraq. And the Dothraki were known as horse warriors, so they were like unbeatable in an open field on horses. But if you're basically fighting, in a fighting pit, or if you're like in a pitched battle against, armored Westerosi knights, how well would he do? I mean, he was known as a great warrior, so that's why I'm putting him in there. But he doesn't crack my top 5 at least. But I think he does deserve a place in the top 7. So that's where I'm putting him, Khal Drogo, number 7, the great Khal. What do you think, Dawg? You're muted, Dawg.
Yeah, I accidentally unmuted the stream. So if you heard a little goofy loop, that was my fault, folks. So my apologies on that. That's where Dawg would fall out of the top list of stream fighters, if you will. That fight. So.
All right.
Anyway, so
go ahead.
Let's see, we're on number 6, right?
Yeah, we're on number 6, and here's Dawg's number 6.
Oops. All right, my number 6 is, wait for it. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I thought I had the same one. Yeah, I have Khal Drogo also as my number 6 fighter. And again, as Milt pointed out, this man was undefeated, right? When you look at him, it's just like, how could you I'm going to take like a boxing reference, if you will, right? Like if I looked at like Rocky Marciano, right? He was an undefeated fighter, right? For his time, nobody ever beat him. So how can he not make your, top list,
Yeah.
So, I mean, his braid is super long. He's got a huge following, by the way. And, for the little bit that we actually did get to see him fight, it was impressive to see, I mean, as big as he was, how fast he could move. And like he was already 5 steps ahead of the other guy who thought he had him beat. Now, the one downfall to him, I will give him, is his durability is awful, right? If you do get a hit on him, it's over, really, right? I mean, he got stabbed one time there, or took like one cut wound there, and that was it. That was all over for him.
Yeah, I mean, of course, no, I think there was help, from that magic bacteria that Mary Mouse Dur gave to him.
I was going to ask that tonight. I figured that would kind of give me a little bit of a clue, because I might have missed that too. Yeah, because she had the witch lady kind of work on him, right? And then she kind of poisoned him. Is that what happened?
Or made his infection worse than
okay.
Should have been.
So that does kind of, skew things a little bit the way I was thinking about this earlier when I was thinking about that. But however, I'm still proud to say that he's still on my top 7 fighters list. Again, this is a person I would not want upset with me or anything like that. So, but yeah, that's my number 6 fighter is Khal Drogo.
And by the way,
Aquaman.
people, he is Aquaman. So, so he gets points for being Aquaman.
And he played Conan also. So
yeah. Oh yeah. And okay, so for my number 6 is none other than, I got to put Sir Gregor Clegane here, the Mountain That Rides. So Dawg's honorable mention is my number 6, and I mean, just look at the guy, right? The guy's an 8 foot tall, 420-pound monster, right? Known for his size, his cruelty, and his prowess in battle. So he wasn't just some lumbering fool that was out there, right? He actually had some quicks and speed. For a person with that much bulk, and also he armed himself up in battle too, right? I mean, there wasn't many ways that you can get through his armor, him being that big, unless you absolutely knew, where the weak points, where the chinks of his armor were. And, his strength actually allowed him to wield like a big 6 foot, 2-handed greatsword. But unlike normal people who can only wield greatswords with 2 hands, he could just wield it with 1 hand because he was just so damn strong. So he had that reach advantage too, that sword. So he was a good enough swordsman, okay, and he also had a good reach advantage for that sword. So, and he had a lot of strength and a lot of mass behind it. So one blow can basically just cut a man in half, and you saw what he did in the show, right? He basically cut off a horse's head, with one slash. And I mean, I don't know how many hacks you need to do to basically cut off a horse's head normally, but I know it's probably more than one, right? For a normal human person, or even a normal strong human person, okay, with a sword. So yeah, I mean, he's pretty much a big badass, a big brute, and he met his downfall with a person that he couldn't match up well against, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. So that is my number 6, the Mountain. So let's go with the Dawg's number 5 and tell them who it is.
All right. So yeah, well said, Milton. Again, like I said earlier with him, I think he is the bar, right? I mean, if you beat him, you're definitely spoken about in the songs and tales, if you will, right? So we're on our number 5, correct?
Yep,
so,
we sure are.
Yeah, I have Sir Arthur Dane, folks, and again, you might be thinking, whoa, I think he's a little, he might be too low, he might be too high, but I think when it was all said and done, I had my factors, if you will. Yeah, I appreciate his scene as he took on. I think the book and the show's a little bit different, right? The book, isn't there supposed to be 3 knights?
Yeah,
they're watching.
Yep. In the books, there's supposed to be like Oswald Wend and Gerald Hightower and him, but in the show, they only made 2 of them, and the other person.
But the show made it
Gerald
kind
Hightower.
of, made the reference, having the 3-eyed raven there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ming the Merciless, right?
The Brand 2000,
right? So they have him there, right? And he's kind of telling Bran, the stories might not be exactly the way you thought they were, because the way it was told was his dad defeated him, and his
Yeah.
dad's like the greatest swordsman that ever lived, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I have my doubts about a lot of these things that happened in the past, things of that nature, right? So now instead of three, there's two, right? So I mean that's why, and the way he was fighting, it was just beautiful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I will give him this one downfall, right? Out of all that great stuff he was doing, how did he not know the guy was coming to get him from the back there? So I still, maybe that's a D&D thing that happened there with it, but he got taken out by one of the oldest tricks in the book there. So, but I think he's a great fighter, and deserving to be on my list in the top 7 fighters.
So minus 10 points for Gryffindor for not being aware of his surroundings. Right.
Exactly. Kind of like when Liam Neeson kind of dumped Bruce Wayne into the ice, right? Kind of one of those things. You always got to mind your surroundings.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably talk about a little bit more about kind of like the liberties that D&D took with this character later on. But in the meantime, my number 5 is Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, and that's only because I had to put him up. I had to put him ahead of Gregor Clegane because he did beat him in battle, and then the only reason why he lost was because he just wanted to extract a confession out of the mountain and got a little bit too close and got tangled up in his arms and got his eyes pushed back into the back of his skull. But besides that, this guy was a certifiable badass. I mean, he was smart, okay? He was fast, and he was a little bit crazy, right? And he was familiar with basically fighting styles from all over the world of Planetos because he did travel as a young man to Essos, different parts of Essos, as well as being trained up in Dorne. So he was familiar with a lot of different fighting styles, but his favorite weapon was a spear, right? So which gave him like an 8-foot to 10-foot reach advantage over anybody else. Combined with his quickness and acrobatics, right? It really made him a pretty formidable foe. Plus, in his back pocket, he was also trained at the Citadel, so he knew about poisons too. Okay, so basically, tip his blade with poisons. Okay, sort of like what he did with the Mountain. Okay, in the books. Sort of, right? Allegedly. And basically, all it takes is basically one scratch. And with the right kind of poison, the guy would be down. So, yeah, I just think, and even if he was de-weaponized, even if he didn't have his spear or anything else, the fact that he did have those knowledge of poisons in his back pocket kind of made him really, really formidable as a fighter, even with bare hands. So that's my number 5, the Red Viper.
It's a great choice and a great another great fighter. Again, you just had that one flaw of, he kind of reminds me of I don't know, just kind of like one of those old wrestlers or something that they were just kind of whooping it up a little bit and didn't see the guy with the with the bell or something about to ring his head, behind him, so it just kind of reminded me of that. But the poison thing too is great too. The way you could, I was thinking about that factor with the way when we were talking about the way I was talking about like truth and things of that nature, and if the gods did actually play some sort of factor into his demise, because like if truth was because he was fighting for the side of truth, the way that we actually saw it as watchers, if you will, right?
Yeah.
But he still meets his demise, even though he was actually kind of fighting on the side of truth. Maybe it was because he poisoned his spears or something, tried to do something a little bit. That's not fair, if you will, I guess, but it's kind of strange. But
Yeah, and I think Marie asked a question in the chat about do I think that he poisoned Tywin prior to his death, and my answer is probably yes, only because what he mentioned in the Feast for Crows during his interment, for his burial, that basically he still smelled really, really bad, meaning that his body or his something in his body was rancid from something. Okay, normally when people die, right? Sure, when they die, you know, the bowels release and all the fluids go out, you know, and they smell at that time. But you know, it gets cleaned up, so it doesn't smell as bad, you know, once they're cleaned up. But Tywin's corpse was still smelling, meaning that, you know, there was probably some rancidness going on in his body, some kind of destruction of the flesh. Something was happening to his flesh, and you know, and the fact that I guess, you know, there was, you know, allegedly Tywin was sitting on the toilet because he was constipated or was having issues, you know, basically, you know, doing what he needed to do in the restroom. And you know, constipation is a symptom of widow's blood, which basically destroys and attacks the bowels of the victim, and basically the victim drowns in his own poisons. So yeah, why not? I mean, Oberyn had issues with the Mountain. He had issues with Tywin, who he claims ordered the Mountain to basically kill his sister and nephew and niece. So yeah, I think he killed him, or at least poisoned them. So
I think he poisoned him too.
Yep. All right, so we're down to our top 4, and here's Dawg's number 4.
Oh yeah, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Yep. So my number 4, folks, is Sandor Clegane, the Hound. So, and yeah, I had to use that little picture of Joffrey. What a little schmuck, you know. So I had to use that picture there with Joffrey there. And I mean, yeah, they even the nastiest of the nastiest people trusted them to guard their foul little beast, right? And yeah, so I had to use that picture when I saw it. So whoever did actually you know, come up with that picture, good on you. Thanks for letting me use that today. And yeah, the Hound is probably one of the, you know, when I think of the word fighter, like when I look at old D&D stuff or whatever, right? I picture him. You know, I just think I think he's been through you know, so much with his arc. He's actually shown it on the field of battle, right? In close quarters combat against multiple multiple attackers, if you will. Too. I'm gonna call the Brienne and Hound thing a D&D. I'm gonna use my D&D mulligan tonight on that one. Because I think that was just kind of fan servicey the way they kind of put that in. But Sandor, yeah, he's fought about every single type of creature that's crossed his path. Really, actually, I mean, he's not afraid to fight anything. He's fought the Whites, and I mean, other than his fear of fire, right? That's like one of his biggest weaknesses is that fear of fire. But yet he decided to get on top of a fire-breathing dragon by the end of the last time we saw him at the end of the series, right? Or the last season, excuse me. Something else I definitely wanted. I wanted to talk about truth a little bit because that was like one of my factors again, right? Again, why did the gods? You know, and I'm kind of assuming that the gods play a little bit of factor in these trial by combats, if you will, folks, right? So, you know, why did the gods favor Sandor Clegane versus Beric Dondarrion, right? I mean, he had just killed a little kid, right? So it does, you know, it's still, you know, but he wasn't necessarily guilty of the charge, I guess, you know, according to the laws of man, if you will, right? So that's my one flaw with Sandor as far as when I look about, you know, who's the truest knight, right? If we were going to have a trial by combat and I wanted to put this person against this person, and I'd said that truth was the main factor here, who's going to win? And, you know, probably nine times out of 10, Sandor's probably going to win that battle. However, you know, I still have that issue that he did kill Micah, right? And his arc has been so fantastic that folks, a lot of times, you know I do. I forget that he killed Micah, you know, who was just a little kid, right? So, you know, he wasn't true to his, you know, to his laws of nature, if you will, right? It's not, you know, it's against the laws. It's against the laws of nature to kill your own kind, right? And especially a little kid, right? So, And that's my one downfall on him. That's why he's not higher on my list. Otherwise, I think he's the truest form of a knight in this series that I've seen so far. So I could talk a lot about the Hound. He's one of my favorite characters, and I wish he was a little bit higher on my list, but I'm comfortable with him at number 4.
And we will see where Brienne fits, unless you think she was lucky when she kicked the Hound off the cliff.
Yeah, and then he was sick too. He was just he was just having his morning duties there, right? Duties. So I mean that might have played a factor also too, right? But again, I'm going to use my Dan and Dave mulligan, if you will, folks. If folks want to be like, well, Brienne beat him, right? I'm going to use my Dan and Dave mulligan on this one, okay? So I know it didn't happen in the books that way, so I'm going to go with that.
All right. And and also he is the MVP of the series for one thing, TV series, and that he has the best lines out of everybody in that show. We have to admit that, right? I don't think anybody can disagree with that. So my number 4 is kind of a tie. It's really 2 people here, and I'll explain why. And they are Aemon Targaryen and Sir Arthur Dayne, okay? Because to me, they're pretty much the same guy, okay? Basically, otherwise known as the Dragon Knight and Sword of the Morning, respectively. Basically, these two are basically the most legendary and noblest fighting knights in Westerosi history, okay? That's, tied for that, because, we don't know a lot about the Dragon Knight other than the fact that, Bran wanted to grow up to be like, Aemon the Dragon Knight, and he was considered the most legendary and noblest of the knights at his time, the same as Sir Arthur Dayne was considered that as well. Basically, they wielded really, really good swords, okay? Aemon the Dragon Knight had Dark Sister, and we had Sir Arthur Dayne as basically wielding the Great Sword Dawn. They were both, arguably the best swordsmen of their eras, right? Respectively. And, to me, they're pretty much the same guy in terms of, their status, their abilities as knights, as well as their abilities as swordsmen. Okay, they were both King's Guards, so they were all armored the same. And, we just don't know enough about Aemon Targaryen to really know how great he was. I mean, we all know what Sir Arthur Dayne was like. There's a lot more written about him, but I wish there was a little bit more written about Aemon Targaryen to basically drill down to see how great of a knight he was. And maybe in Fire and Blood Part 2, Volume 2, we might actually get a lot more of his backstory, because he was post Aegon III, so we're not reading. We don't get much of his story in the Fire and Blood novel right now. But again, they're both the epitome of knights, of Westerosi knights. They're great swordsmen, and the fact that they were so good with swords, I think, offset what would happen if they were de-weaponized or de-armored, if you will. I think they were just so far heads and above everybody else in their time in terms of sword fighting abilities that they deserve at least a rank of number 4 to me. And I just have one point to make about Sir Arthur Dayne. The fact Dawn is a great sword, okay? So in the show, they showed him wielding basically Dawn as a long sword, as a one-handed sword. A great sword is wielded with 2 hands, unless you're the mountains. So I think Dan and Dave took liberty for that just to make him look a little bit cooler than he really was, because Dawn's a 2-handed sword. So I just want to let everybody know about that. So, but besides that,
yeah, it was confusing to me as because I do, even though I've only read the first book and things of that nature, I get into the wikis and things of that nature, read about all the characters and stuff, right? And when I saw that, he's fighting with 2 swords, I had never remembered that happening that way. But maybe Dan and Dave again were throwing that in there, kind of like when they had, Blood Raven there saying, is that the way it really happened? Is so it's kind of, I just.
I mean, and also, maybe Dan and Dave thought, okay, maybe him fighting with 2 swords would basically take the place of the missing Kingsguard that was supposed to be there,
I mean, they made it look cool. I will give them that. So.
Yeah, but it did look cool, fan service, but Remember, Dawn is a great sword, so he should have been fighting with two hands on that sword. So, anyway, but nevertheless, it doesn't take away from these two guys being, personally, I think, at number 4 on my list for just being such badass Kingsguard and swordsmen of their time, while still, representing the true virtues of Westerosi knights, if you will. So that's my number 4. And hey, guys, we are in the top 3 now. So let's do it.
And my number 3 is, I forgot to do a troll answer tonight. I should have done a troll answer with this one, just because I see Felicia in there now. But you guys are going to be really surprised because my number 3 is Sir Jorah Mormont. So, and yeah, this is one of my favorite characters in the series now. I've seen him grow and go through like just an amazing arc through this entire series to the point that yeah, he's one of my favorites. So I hope he makes it through the final series, the final season. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to make it, folks. But this guy's durability, his arc, and again, we're talking about. I am anyway. I'm talking about the truth and the night and things of that nature, right? He didn't make like one of his biggest mistakes was selling people off to slavery, right? And spying on Danny, things of that nature, right? Being false, things of that nature. But I haven't seen him run. I've never seen him run down a little kid, right? Now, what he's done, is it worse than what the Hound did per se? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not, right? So that's where I was kind of flip flopping, going, hey, do I have the Hound up here, or do I have Jorah up here, right? But Jorah is a champion of champions as well, right? So we've seen him, go through with people who are actually experienced fighters, right? And that's what they do for a living, right? And he was absolutely devoted to his queen that he decided to, the only way he was going to get back in front of her face was to beat these people, right? And he did that, right? Now, again, I'm going to use another Dan and Dave Mulligan on the final battle, because as badass as they made him look to be on like the previous episode or two, right? They kind of show him to where like he possibly could have been beaten, right, by the Braavosi, right? But again, I saw him take out champions in that fighting pit. When all those champions were in that fighting pit, the only one that was left alive was Sir Jorah Mormont. And also his, one of the things that he overcame, he's probably one of the first people to survive other than Shireen, Grayscale, right? So, I mean, look at his durability right there. And that guy was an absolute monster and a trooper to go through what he went through as Sam cured him of the Grayscale. So, yeah, I definitely would. And also his wisdom is just on his wisdom is on par with Tyrion's. They showed that as they were going through, on their, forgive me, folks. So what was when they went through the Doom of Valyria, right? Weren't they going through Valyria there, Milt, on the show? You remember?
They were going down the Rhine River and basically passed. Well, I mean, or doing it in the books or in the show.
But what I mean by wisdom was things of like, how they were talking, they were doing a poem or a song or something, right?
Okay.
And Tyrion said one line and then Jorah just counteracted it with the other, right? Yeah. Tyrion and Jorah were great together in their scenes. And I think he's probably one of the wisest fighters on my list. And I have no qualms with having Sir Jorah Mormont on my list. So I think, his arc is just as incredible as like the Hound. And, I mean, they've all kind of gone through some form of, to where they were pretty much dead almost, right? And came back, right? And that's why he's on my list. And, he went in there and he's fought. He's not afraid to fight or to face any enemy. He's not afraid of any enemy at all.
Yeah, no.
Oh, one last thing, and I'll shut up, Mel.
Okay. No problem. Go ahead.
One of the other factors I liked about him was he doesn't boast up his skills or anything like that, really, right? We've seen him talk to the Blood Rider, right, or the other Dothraki about, the differences between the way their fighting styles are, to, you know, guys that fight with armor and things of that nature, right? But he doesn't boast about his skills. We've seen him boast to other people. We've seen him boast about, not really boast so much, but like when they first met Sir Barristan Selmy, right? And he's like, he's probably one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about certain, when he talked about Thoros of Myr, right, when he was dying, right, and he was basically like, you know, it was. I thought you were the bravest man I had ever seen, things of that nature, right? But we've never seen Jorah talk about how great he is. So that was another factor that kind of played into it with Sir Jorah. So with that, I'll shut up.
I mean, I remember that one scene from season 6 where Tyrion and him were basically captured by the slavers, and Tyrion basically told the slavers, you know, basically, yeah, sure, he's a bit long in the tooth, but he's tough, you know, and I think that's what Jorah is. I think he's really, really tough, you know, and I think he'll be pretty hard to kill, essentially. So.
Oh yeah, and one last thing, right? When all those guys, right, all those top notch fighters, right, had that bear, right, the white bear, right, the dead white bear. It's kind of hard to say that, right, and make sense, right? Who one-shotted it? Jorah did, right? He just one-shotted the bear, and that was it. That was the end of it. But you know, and all those other guys couldn't take down the bear, but Jorah did. I just wanted to mention that.
Right, dog. Number 3, Sir Friendzone of Bear Island. So my number 3 is Prime Bobby B, Robert Baratheon. Okay, the Demon of the Trident. Okay, think about what he was as a young man and in his prime. Okay, before he became a fat whoremonger king. Okay, essentially, you know, he was like the human Hulk. Okay, armed with a warhammer, a weapon that's specifically built and devised to basically kill people in armor. Okay, he didn't use no sword. He basically wielded like a 60-pound warhammer. That's how strong he was, to basically bash people's chests in, you know, while they were basically suited up in armor. He was 6'6". He's a 6'6" crusher who, just like the Hulk, got stronger as he got angrier. Okay, I would have hated to see this guy full of rage, especially the way he went after Rhaegar after he met him in the at the Trident. I mean, if I was Rhaegar, I'd be shitting my pants and basically running for the hills, you know. But you know, kudos to Rhaegar. He stood up and tried to fight with him, you know, fight with Robert, and you know, it was a good fight. But at the end, you know, he got his chest caved in, and all the rubies basically splattered into the ruby ford. Anyway, so a quote from the books is that they said that Robert Baratheon was strong as a bull and fearless in battle, and this guy loved nothing better than war and fighting. Okay, and also, you know, if you take away his weapons, take away his armor, I mean, look at this guy. I mean, and how intimidating this person would have been. I mean, he probably would have just, to me, he would just basically pummeled pretty much anybody on this list, even if he was, you know, de-weaponized and de-armored, just by his sheer, you know, will, his sheer fearlessness, you know, is basically his sheer strength. So, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think that he's a legendary warrior. I mean, he's not top 2, but he definitely is in my top 3, and that's Prime Robert Baratheon. Dog, what do you think?
Well done. Maybe afterward I'll talk about why maybe some aren't possibly on my list. Again, some of these just broke my heart that I couldn't have on my list. This was one of them, but I had a reason behind it. So maybe if we have some time,
sure, definitely.
Yeah. Well done, Milt.
All right, so we're doing the top 2 now, guys.
Yeah, we are in the top 2, folks.
Yeah,
and I'm telling you right now, my number 2, folks.
Number 2, go for it.
She's a monster. Arya Stark, folks, is my number 2 fighter, and what's scary about her is she's only going to get better. So we've seen her go from not even be able to catch the sword to absolutely toying with Brienne of Tarth, right? As badass as Brienne is, right? It took Arya about 2 seconds to have needles stuck right in her face, right? I mean, if she wanted to, right? She could have just basically killed her with her little finger, right? So Arya is only going to get better too, as young as she is. So she's gone through some major arcs. there's not a lot of I can't really think of you know, when I thought about my my factors of truth
Mm-hmm.
and honesty, things of that nature that would make a, you know, an honest fighter. If the gods were to pay a little, you know, if the gods were to come down and pay a little help, if you will, to that fighter, right? I can't think of a lie that Arya has really been involved in. Maybe, you know, when she went and killed off Meryn Trent for her own you know, for her own selfish needs, I guess, if you will, right? If you want to bring that up, that's. I can't think of anything that really that was like that makes her a liar or something like that, right? I mean, she plays the game of liars and or faces, right? But you know, she plays the liar. But you know, Arya Stark is an honest character, all in all, I think. But yeah, she's only gonna get better. Yeah, she's pretty scary. She might be one of the greatest fighters in the history of this entire series by the time it's all said and done. When we think about it, so yeah, I mean, Brianna Tarth, as badass as she is, and Arya was just like, you know, I think she's so good she's bored. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think she just wanted to go out there and just show Brienne, you know, really what's up. I mean, it made Brienne go out of character to where she had to like kind of go to Bronn tactics, if you will, right, and kick her, right, or something like that, right, and then Arya was still just, you know, toe to toe. I think she's still just kind of playing with her.
Yeah, you know, Dawg. I mean, I respect your choice, but you know, this is going to be a controversial choice no matter what, you know. And to me, you know, I was thinking about putting in faceless men. There are people like Cyril Farrell, you know, Jaqen H'ghar, but you know, her training and these other guys, you know, they're killers, not necessarily fighters. That makes sense. They operate by stealth. You know, they're assassins. You know, I found it really hard to actually put any of these guys as top fighters in kind of in a situation where they were face to face with one of these other brutes on the lists, you know, that we have. You know what I mean? Maybe they can win. I mean, I don't know, but to me, it was very difficult for me to actually put like a faceless man, you know, or a person with that kind of training in this list.
I was skeptical on it too at first, right? But then I just thought about, boy, if I just put her versus, I mean, I'm gonna have trouble knowing where to put my money at, you know. And again, anybody on this list, I feel, can beat anybody that's on this list. There's some people that aren't on my list that, you know, that could beat some people that, you know, they're on my list too. I just, but yeah, when I thought about it, you know, if they said, hey, you know, Arya Stark versus Suchenstein, right? I'm probably going to put my money on Arya Stark, right? As a one-on-one fight, right? Because of her, you know, what she's learned through her arts and things of that nature, right? She's, you know, she's pretty fast. She's, you know, probably one step ahead of the other fighter.
All right, cool. Great. So for my number 2. Okay, and this is a kind of a lesser-known character from the novels. None other than Belwas, otherwise known as Strong Belwas. Okay, he's really overlooked, okay, in everybody, you know, in everybody's eyes. I mean, he appears only in basically A Dance with Dragons. He's basically, you know, the protector or the bodyguard of Daenerys Targaryen, okay? Ilaria Mopatis basically sends him over to protect her. And this guy is a badass. I mean, he's like a 7.5 foot, you know, colossus who happens to be a eunuch also, right? So you can't kick him in the nuts and he goes down, right? Because he doesn't have any. So anyway, he claims to be basically have never lost a fight, undefeated in the fighting pits of Meereen. Now, how badass of a fighter do you have to be never defeated in the fighting pits? That means you know all the tricks. You can fight with, you know, you can fight anybody with different styles. I mean, he is pretty much a certifiable, you know, champion in terms of fighting. And, you know, he has this really awesome signature move, you know, where basically, you know, he basically allows his opponent to basically cut him once. And then he just laughs at that and basically goes after him, you know, goes after his opponents and basically kills them afterwards. Okay, hence, that's why he's full of scars. And somebody might say, oh, okay, well, you know, he allows you to cut you once, so Oberyn can kill him then because his spears are basically full of poison. Because, this guy is so badass that he basically survived eating a plate of poison locusts that, you know, assassins tried to basically kill Dany with, and all he ended up with ended up with was a stomach ache. Okay, so he also, he also has, the basically the precedent of being able to survive poisons too. So he would just crash the mountain. He would just crash Oberyn, and he would basically pretty much crush anybody except for my number one, in my list as just being somebody who's really unbeatable, a mammoth, a colossus, Strong Belwas, undefeated champion of Essos and the Marine fighting pits. Dog.
Now he did get a stomach ache from the locust, or
yeah. I mean, he almost died, but he just complained of a stomach ache.
That is pretty impressive.
Yeah, think about eating a bunch of poison locusts and just coming back and say, whatever, my tummy hurts.
Yeah, he's a fan favorite there.
Yeah,
I've heard his name quite a bit, and I've read a little bit about him.
Yep, Strong
So
Belwas.
what's happening now? Oh yeah, AU said I'm going all SJW now. I picked Arya.
All right, hey guys, we are down to our number one here.
Number one.
All right, so we're gonna start with Dawg, and Dawg, tell me who your number one is.
You know who it is? It's the king in the north, the king of the realm, the king of everything. It's Jon Snow. Yeah. I mean, who's going to beat Jon Snow, right? I mean, seriously, and by the time I got done thinking about all the great things that Jon Snow has done, right? And I thought about it, right? If there was one battle left, right, in the series, right, and Jon Snow was on one side, and you could put any fighter on the other side, who's going to win that fight? Who's your money on, right? My money's on Jon Snow to take them all out, right? So Jon Snow fights the elites and the bosses, right? While everybody else is fighting trash mobs, things of that nature, right? So, we've seen him take down 2 walkers. We've seen his bravery, if you will, right? Maybe it might have been stupidity at the time, right? Or maybe the emotions got the best of him, or maybe Dan and Dave just weren't thinking when they were writing some things, right? But what a great shot there of you know what you're bringing all the cavalry at one man just standing there with his bastard sword, right? And he's just like, come get it, right? And so right that shot right there just sums up his bravery, if you will, right? The boss of bosses, right, has a stare down with him, right? He's his arch nemesis, right? He's his Joker to the Batman, his Lex Luthor to the Superman, right? This is the quintessential king of truth, if you will, right? Also, out of all the, he's been raised as a bastard, right? When he should have been pampered like King Joffrey or something, right? Because he's the true heir. And he's also the people's champion, if you will, right? I mean, he has gone through, the things that the Night's Watch, right? The folks picked him there, right? The free folk picked him, right? To side with him, right? To unite with them, right? Heck, even the last living giant, right, said his name out of all those people, right? The last living giant on earth stood up and said the word Snow, right? I will follow you, right? So, and again, like I said, like if I was going to have a trial by combat, that was one of my main factors into this, right? And if the true knight kind of thing was coming into play, right? Who's more truer than Jon Snow, right? That's all I'm saying. Who's more honorable? Who has more truth to him than Jon Snow? Maybe Ned Stark, possibly, right? But I still think Jon Snow is the quintessential, he's the true king, if you will, right? And by the time this series is all said and done, books or show, he will be the greatest fighter that the series has ever known or come to know. And I think that by the time it's all said and done, he'll fight the champion of champions and the Night King, and he'll take him down, and he will be the greatest fighter of all time. So I have foreseen it.
And I don't know what to say.
That's my number one, buddy.
I don't know what to say other than he does have that impenetrable plot armor that Dan Dave gave him too. So that helps a lot. So for my number one, it is none other than my man, my favorite personality in all of Game of Thrones, and it's the Stable Boy, otherwise known as Needle Sponge, from season 1, who gets basically stabbed by Arya. Look at that. Look at those moves he made. I mean, come on. I mean, he's awesome. You can't beat this guy. Okay? That is my number one fighter in all Westeros Sea history, Game of Thrones. No, I'm just kidding. Okay? It's not really the Stable Boy. Okay? It is none other than, really, my favorite person. Daemon, the freaking Black Dragon, Blackfire. Okay, this guy was a certifiable badass. I mean, to me, even more than than Strongbow was. Okay, I mean, think about what this guy accomplished in his short life. Basically, he wielded Aegon the Conqueror's legendary Valyrian steel sword, Blackfire, given to him at the age of 14 by his daddy, Aegon the Fourth, the Unworthy. Okay, in the Battle of the Redgrass Field, okay, he was described as fighting. He fought like the warrior himself that day. Okay, basically, the warrior is one of the 7 gods, right? So nobody's been described as fighting like a god. Okay, until this guy was described as that, and nobody has since been described as fighting like a god on a battlefield. Okay. Basically, when he started his rebellion, all the great knights of Westeros basically chose to follow him, okay, because of his martial skill, okay? He was called by these knights, the king who bore the sword. It was only by sheer luck, okay, and I would say questionable tactics by his half-brother that actually brought him down. He mastered all kinds of battle weapons, okay? He wasn't just good with Blackfire, but he was trained and basically mastered all sorts of battle weapons. So basically, probably including hand-to-hand combat. So even if he was de-armored, even if he didn't have Blackfire with him, he would have probably kicked people's asses left and right, no matter how big they were. Okay, he was undefeated all his life. Okay, there's nothing in the books that said right now that he was ever defeated. Okay, in his life, except for the very end. Maybe we'll get some more, expansion of the story in Fire and Blood Part 2. But as of now, he was undefeated until he was basically killed by an ambush from a group of archers, led by his, questionable half-brother, who shall remain nameless who that person is. Bloodraven, by the way. So, anyway, I would give Jon one advantage here, and that is Daemon Blackfire did not survive a hail of arrows, but yet Jon Snow did survive a hail of arrows. So, just based on that fact alone, Jon Snow could be number one. So, anyway, that is my number one, Daemon the freaking Black Dragon, Blackfire.
Sorry about that, folks. I unmuted the stream accidentally again in the end. But yeah, great stuff there, Milt. He kind of is he kind of like King Isildur from Lord of the Rings, getting ambushed like that?
Yeah, but instead of like being ambushed by a bunch of orcs, just kind of riding along, he was basically ambushed while he was basically. I mean, he defeated Gwaine Corbray, who also had like a Valyrian steel sword called Lady Forlorn. Okay, that the Corbrays have from the Vale, and then he basically let him live. And then his sons died on the field, by Bloodraven, by basically the Raven's Teeth, which is like his group of archers, Bloodraven's archers. And then while he was mourning his sons' deaths, right, on the battlefield, Bloodraven decides to fire another volley of arrows at Daemon Blackfire, and that killed him. So,
right, yeah, like Jon survived all those. Yeah, he survived a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
he survived death too.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jon did survive a hail of arrows for that good old plot armor. So maybe he is number one. Anyway, I think that's our list, guys. You want to go ahead and recap?
Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he'll just be like King Arthur. He might not necessarily the best, might be the best king, but not necessarily the best fighter. But I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be the best fighter and the best, and the truest king. The true servant of the people, if you will. Right. So I think that's where I hope that's where he's kind of going with it. But again, I'm going all SJW here, according to AU, but
And everybody's thinking about making their own lists right now. So I think before we go, we should go ahead and basically recap. And let's just start with our honorable mentions first. Who is your honorable mention?
I had the Mountain.
Yep, and I have the Red Kraken, Dalton Greyjoy. And number 7.
Number 7, I think I had Tormund Giantsbane.
Yep, and I had Khal Drogo. Number 6.
Right. Number 6, I had Khal Drogo as well.
Yeah, Khal Drogo number 6, and number 6 I had who did I have? I had the Mountain for number 6.
Yep, you did.
Mm-hmm.
And then my number 5 was Sir Arthur Dayne.
Yep. And my number 5 was the Red Viper, Oberyn Martell.
Yep. My number 4 was Sandor Clegane, the Hound. You'd think the dog would have had the Hound up there a little higher.
Mm-hmm. And my number 4 was kind of aiming the Dragon Knight Targaryen / Sir Arthur Dayne, because to me they were both the same person, as what we know right now. And your number 3?
Yeah, my number 3 was Sir Jorah Mormont.
And my number 3 is Prime Robert Baratheon.
Yep, and his prime. Then my number 2, I had Arya Stark.
Mm-hmm. And my number 2 is Strong Belwas.
And my number 1 was Luke Skywalker. Jon Snow.
and my number 1 is the stable boy. No, it is Daemon the Black Dragon, Blackfire.
I was thinking if we ever did worst fighters ever, Stable Boy might make that list.
Yeah, Stable Boy.
How long did he ever last? He was like super jobber in wrestling or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'd probably be him, Micah the Butcher's Boy, probably Lamy Greenhands. Let's see, and probably some other people.
But yeah, Stable Boy would definitely make the list there, as far as it just didn't work out very well. And quickly it was over.
I mean, he was just basically just like Walrus Man. He was basically at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's all.
Poor Walrus Man.
Yeah.
It was his friend's fault too. You always got that friend that.
Yeah.
Right. That starts it, right?
Yeah.
Because Walrus Man, he was. Well, I guess he did kind of say a couple things, but then his friend really just, threw some fuel to the fire there. The "you'll be dead" guy. Yep.
So anyway, folks, that's it for this installment of our top 5 series, or top 7 series in this case. Anyway, thanks a lot for coming out and basically joining us while we break down this list. Again, you may or may not agree with what we say. You may or may not agree with what the criteria that we use. But this is at least 2 men's opinions on what we think are the top 7 fighters in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Is there anything else you want to say, Dawg?
Oh, no, thanks. And yeah, again, folks, it was all in good fun. And like I said, we had different types of criteria and factors that we were looking at. So, I highly doubt that my list is probably the most unique list possibly in the world, right? So, but I definitely had fun doing it and breaking down some of the characters, learning about some of them that I wasn't so familiar with as well. And I really enjoy doing these top lists with the Ninja folks and trying to entertain you folks as best I can. So
great. And Dawg, so is there anything else you have planned on your channel that we can look at
in
the next couple of days?
Well, next we're gonna do our next top list, folks. I think we're gonna do retro video games, weren't we, Mel?
Yeah,
we were talking about doing that.
Yep. Yeah. I think we were talking about doing some retro arcade games.
Yeah, thinking old Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's going to be our next top list. We're going to talk like our old coin-operated games, if you will, right? So our top list on those, and we've got a couple more projects. We were just rattling off a couple last time we were speaking to one another, and we've got 4 shows already lined up, folks. So please look forward to seeing Dawg Dawg and Milt on the Westerosi Ninjas channel and on the Dawg Show as well. So, and again, real quickly, folks, I'm Dawg Sidious still, but I just changed the channel name. It's the Dawg Show. We're just not completely specific with Star Wars, but I'm going to be more kind of like a broader entertainment news, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, things of that nature. The other kind of things I talk about, games too as well. So, and I'm probably going to do a live stream very soon, probably possibly tomorrow, just to kind of give a channel update and shoot the breeze with folks. So thanks for having me, Mel.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. And also, and as always, we look forward to any of your contributions out there. I think your Red Dead Redemption streams are really, really entertaining, and they serve a purpose, I think, for a lot of us, because it's really quite relaxing to watch somebody play that game. Such a cool game to watch and kind of explore with you. The world of Red Dead Redemption. So thanks a lot for basically having those videos on.
Oh, thank you, my friend.
Yeah, and to everybody else in the chat, thanks a lot for coming out here. Don't want to basically shout everybody out because I'll probably miss somebody. But anyway, again, thanks a lot for having.
Some if you like.
What?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We have Game of Theories with Marie.
Okay.
Andrew Saunders, Brand the Bearded Builder, Living My Rhapsody, AU Pack Mule, Rhodes Rants on Star Wars, Bobby Cantillano, it's Mary B's here with us, Felicia, of course, OTDA is also with us too. I saw some other folks too. I'm gonna get fired because I thought I had this all ready to go, but if I missed any of you folks, shout me out next time and I'll get you back. But I think I got the bulk of them that are. Oh, Chrissy of Old Stones too. Hey, Chrissy. So
thanks a lot. That's it. Thanks a lot, man. So until next time, we'll talk. Until next time, we'll see ya. We're off. Bye.
Later, folks.